Sun, look at the environment itself. It's beautiful. So we are waiting to see how it's going to pan out today, being the last day of this particular function. And at this particular point, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a listen to the national anthem.
Sasa mko na favor. Mko na clip yenye president akiingia hivi. A good excited. Celebrate match ziliingia.
International Convention Center. If you have never been to KICC, now you are getting a clear picture and a clear tour of how KICC and the environment looks like.
An aerial view.
An aerial view.
Yeah.
For free. Sometimes you can go there and you'll be charged, but this one is for free. So ukiwa nyumbani, mambo ni matatu: KBC, KICC, na Climate Summit.
Yes.
All right. That's how we get it here.
Yes.
All right. We are still continuing the coverage. The president has just arrived at the convention center, Kenya House, and of course, it's going to be about and how things are going to pan out there. What should we look at? Charles, what should we look at this particular event that the president is going to be tackling at this particular point?
Thank you so much. I think correct the energy in the president, you know, and of course, rallying, of course, his troops, you know, in ensuring that we are pushing through this climate change agenda and checking to see what we can also do internally, you know, ourselves to save ourselves from this particular challenge. So, you know, the question of cities, you know, is also quite key. Sometimes we forget about, you know, the impacts of climate change in the cities. And I think we need to think about, you know, how do we build in resilient, you know, cities? You know, how do we ensure that the population also within the cities, you know, is actually well cushioned against the impact of climate change? You know, when it comes to water shortage, for example, you know, you realize that it hits first and foremost, you know, the urban areas, because, you know, the rivers, of course, will flow from the catchment areas, but that water is what is going to be piped, you know, coming into the cities and so on and so forth. And with our population increasing, realizing that there's a lot of urban, you know, rural-urban migration. Of course, people are coming to look for greener pastures, you know, in urban areas and so on and so forth. It's important that we think about how then we build, you know, resilient infrastructure in terms of our water systems and so on and so forth. Yeah, but again, coming back to finish the conversation around the just transition that you just talked about, you know, given Africa also has an opportunity to emit as we develop. It has an opportunity to take the same trajectory that was taken by the West. But because we're in a green revolution, we have an opportunity to take a different trajectory, and we can be able to utilize, of course, our green, you know, sources of energy. You know, we have solar for almost 12 hours in a day. That doesn't happen in the West, for example. We have geothermal potential, we have wind potential, like Dr. Kadambi indicated, and we can be able to tap these resources and take a different trajectory than what was taken by our compatriots from the West.
All right. So I'm told that the event has started, so I think it's just good enough for us just to cross over to KICC and take a listen to what's happening there. All right, straight to Kenya House.
All cabinet and principal secretaries present,
members of the diplomatic corps, all distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Your Excellency, sir, with your permission, at this point, I would like to invite the Cabinet Secretary for Housing and Urban Development, Zakaria Njero, to lead us in the next part. Tumpigie makofi akija tafadhali. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellency, the President, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this auspicious event where we'll be discussing the operationalization of the building climate resilient for the urban poor. We're all aware of the ever-increasing challenges of climate change, urbanization, and social inequalities, and this requires concerted effort in order to limit their negative impact on the vulnerable population. With the rapid growth in cities and urban areas, the number of urban poor population has been increasing, so that we have nearly 1 billion people living in informal settlement. The future being urban, building resilience and enhancing the adaptive capacity of the urban poor to recover from shocks and stresses is a major aspect to be integrated into the climate emergency discourses. This rapid urbanization has the benefit of providing us with unprecedented economic growth, connectivity, access to information, and conveniences of modern living. At the same time, however, we have the increasing pressure to ensure that we manage inequalities created by uneven application of resources in the provision of urban services. At a worst case, majority of the urban poor finds home in urban fragile ecosystems with climate-induced vulnerability. Hence, they live in perpetual state of disturbances. BCRAP is an initiative. BCRAP as an initiative is a commitment to ensure no one is left behind in the face of increasing fragile urban ecosystem. This program thus has the potential to be a beacon of hope, promising to transform the lives of the most vulnerable in our society with focus on cities and local governments. As we craft holistic solutions that integrate climate resilience, poverty alleviation, and sustainable urban development, I'd want to invite His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, to share his conviction to the world on the importance of operationalizing this initiative, as well as launch the implementation of the Building Climate for the Urban Poor strategy for the 2023-2030. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Please, let's take our seats. Asante sana. Excellencies, honorable members, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me first, on behalf of the people and government of Kenya, welcome delegates who do not come from Kenya. Please feel at home while you are in Kenya. You know the reasons why you have to feel at home, because this is home anyway. I'm deeply honored to have this opportunity to warmly welcome each and every one of you to this event where at last we bring into operation a critical flagship program of the high-level presidential initiative that Kenya launched 4 years ago at the UN Climate Summit in New York. At that summit, Kenya and Turkey had jointly led the discussion track on infrastructure, cities, and local action, and together with Brazil, developed and spearheaded the initiative, on building resilience for the urban poor with technical support from the UN Habitat and our State Department for Housing and Urban Development is the designated focal point. And I want to thank the State Department for all the work they have done with us. And in fact, our design of the affordable housing program is informed to a great extent by the insights that we have acquired by associating with this program. Owing to the rapidly accelerating rates of urbanization globally, the population of poor people in our cities and urban areas has likewise grown. Consequently, over 1 billion people now live in informal settlements, and specifically in Kenya, we have 1,410 informal settlements around the country. Many people think when we talk about informal settlement, it's just Kibera and a few other places in Nairobi. That's not the case. And meaning that they lack the advantage of access to superior amenities and infrastructures that come with residing in cities and are therefore vulnerable to various shocks and stresses. In fact, with the governor of Nairobi, we were somewhere in Roysambu in Nairobi, and the paradox is that there are more children in informal settlements in Nairobi that do not go to school than in rural Kenya. It's a real paradox. Many people, when they think about cities, they think about Uhuru Highway and Kenyatta Avenue and Lavington and those parts of Nairobi. That is not the case. So this is reality. This is in addition to lacking both access and the capacity to utilize existing opportunities of self-advancement. The initiative to build resilience and enhance the adaptive capacity of the urban poor is a vital component that must be integrated into climate action and emergency response agenda. Due to their circumstances, the urban poor live and struggle for livelihoods in informal settlements, making them climate vulnerable and consistently sustainable to external shocks and disasters, as demonstrated in numerous disasters that happen in our informal settlements. By definition, the urban poor also lack the resources to invest in adaptations necessary for them to cope with the impacts of climate-related shocks and stresses. This vulnerability has far-reaching consequences on the lives and livelihoods of urban poor, and especially the youth and women and people living with disabilities in these informal settlements. It is for this reason that this program has been formulated as a timely initiative that enables states, especially in Africa, to implement effective interventions aimed at enhancing climate adaptation in the midst of explosive growth of urbanization and the increasing rate of climate-induced migration to urban poor. Whenever we are having this conversation, the conversation is not whether the world is urbanizing. In fact, the statement, the future is urban, is real. It is for us to decide what kind of urban we will have in the future. Whether it is one that is informal, that doesn't have amenities, that lacks water, that lacks sewer, that lacks all the amenities that are required for any dignified living in any part of the world, rural or urban, or whether we have a different scenario. And it is therefore the concepts around this program that is dedicated to championing coordinated action to reduce urban vulnerability to climate change and at the same time mitigate the urban crisis in general. Globally, Kenya reports to the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Team, while nationally, the State Department of Housing and Urban Development is the focal point, as I have already indicated. I invite all stakeholders with an interest in building more sustainable and inclusive urban areas to seriously consider the aims and purposes of this program and to support its efforts to ease the burden of climate change on the segments of our population that is least able to respond to it. And I'm very happy that we have many governors in our midst, because they manage, or you manage, municipalities, you manage townships, and some of the time, these are the hotspots that we are discussing in these concepts. Adequate financing remains a primary weakness, which leaves many countries unprepared to confront the impacts of climate change, whose incidence is disproportionate in comparison with our documented emissions contribution, as well as their equally disproportionate adverse effects on the urban poor. I appeal to these stakeholders, including our development partners, to extend robust support to the implementation of this program and its activities, which include readiness programs in diverse areas like water and sanitation resilience, energy resilience, livelihoods and economic systems of the vulnerable residents, urban regeneration, including the reclamation of fragile ecosystems, resettlement of communities, and resilient urban spatial plans, green urban spaces, and developing resilience governance frameworks. I thank the leadership of the United Cities and local governments of Africa for mobilizing support for this program throughout our continent and championing its coming into operation. With the clarity of the objectives of this initiative and the dedication of the strong partners that we have, as well as the goodwill and commitment of all our stakeholders, I am confident that this program will succeed in delivering on its mandate. I take this opportunity to wish you productive engagement, and I'm looking forward to a hybrid of ideas from different sectors and an open conversation, honest conversation on what interventions are we looking at. Critical infrastructure, critical services in cities, water, sanitation, electricity, roads, pathways, infrastructure, education infrastructure, health infrastructure. These are the critical services that are important, even in the context of climate change. We must be sensitive as to what climate change is doing to the provision and the ability of governments at all levels to make provisions for these services. And as I have said, we are having a very big conversation around finance and about resources and about investments. I remember having a conversation with the governor of Nairobi about garbage and how we need to monetize garbage, how we need to invest in collection, management, and making sure that garbage does not become a problem. In fact, we try and make it an opportunity. And I think so much is happening in that direction. And that will be extended to many of our large and medium cities in Kenya. So these are conversations that we want to work with you. And I want to thank the UN agencies for being our partners. And you have my commitment, that of the government of Kenya, and I can speak with a measure of authority on behalf of our counties that we are all partners in this, and you can count on our partnership, our support, our collaboration, and we will make sure that this goes forward. I take this opportunity finally to wish you productive engagements, robust deliberations, and successful resolutions in all items covered in the sessions that will proceed after this, and await concrete recommendations on this program for integration into the Nairobi Leaders Declaration and Call to Action. Unfortunately, I would have really wanted to sit in and listen to some of the good ideas that will be part of this conversation. But unfortunately, I have to do some other business in the other side of the conference. But I have enough people who will make sure that we get the correct information and we do what we must as government at the national level with the support of government at the other levels. Thank you very much. My very best wishes.
Your Excellency, sir, maybe just before you exit the stage, just to unveil the Building Climate Resilience of the Urban Poor Initiative. If I may kindly request that we sit down for the sake of the cameras as he's doing that, but we can give a round of applause as His Excellency now unveils that. Then we'll also have a brief photo opportunity with, there you go, with that unveiling. Thank you, Your Excellency. Also, as we allow His Excellency to exit, kindly let's not all leave. We still have some sessions that are going on, but that's the Big Crop Implementation Strategy 2023 to 2030 launch. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And after he has left, we shall continue.
Thank you very much. We may all be seated. Our program continues. We get to the second segment of this important program. And you can cue the presentation. All right. As you've heard, this program, Big Crop, was started in the year 2019. It's part of the UN Call for Action on Climate Change, where Kenya and Turkey and Brazil took an initiative to drive the issues of infrastructure, cities, and local governments. As part of that subtract, Kenya came up with this program of building climate resilience in the urban poor. And Brazil joined us, and Turkey went ahead to run with the program on transport. Since then, we have come up with the reporting architecture where, as a country, as His Excellency the President has just said, we report to the UN Secretary General's team on climate action. And at the national level, our State Department reports to His Excellency the President. But because our time is far much gone, and I know that you will be able to pick up a few of the issues as we go on, I would like to jump straight to the next session. And I'm going to moderate the next session where we have 5 speakers. And we will try and keep to the time allocated. So it is my great pleasure. It is my great pleasure to invite the Executive Director of the UN Habitat, Madam Maimuna Maud Sharif, to come and make her remarks. So let's put our hands together as she comes to give her remarks. Karibu Idi. Karibu.
Thank you so much, PS, Your Excellency, President William Ruto, Honorable Zakaria Mawangi Nyeru, Cabinet Secretary for Land and Urban Development, Kenya, distinguished delegate, mayors, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. Habaria usubuhi. It's a great honor to be here at this panel together with such distinguished speakers, taking the next bold step towards operationalizing the Building Climate Resilient for the Urban Poor initiative. I extend my congratulations to the government of the Republic of Kenya for organizing such an excellent Africa Climate Summit. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegate, for short, BCRUP, not that I would like to do is short form, but it's BCRUU or BCRUP initiative sits very well in your government mantra in Kenya of bottom-up economic transformation by directly addressing the climate change vulnerabilities of the poor living in urban areas. The timing to launch the next phase of operationalizing the BCRUP initiative at this Africa Climate Summit is not only strategic, but also a clear statement that time for talk is over. It is time for action. As I have given 3 minutes, I would like to keep my intervention to 3 key commitments to operationalize the BCRUP initiative. First, UN Habitat is committed to providing technical input to operationalize the BCRUP initiative by sharing our vast amount of bespoke adaptation and resilient solutions for the most vulnerable communities. Our solution has been tested in over 20 countries across the globe with a focus on least developed countries, and also small island developing states. This technical guidance will derive from our ongoing work in Kenya, Africa, and peer countries in relevant sectors of the BCRUP initiative, such as waste management, as what the Excellency President mentioned just now. For instance, the Go Blue project in counties along the coastal counties of Kenya, planning, and our own resource revenue for sustainable and resilient communities. We will continue to offer technical support to housing and urban regeneration project in Kenya, such as the Mavoko Affordable Housing Project, which is ongoing now, and the Nairobi River Basin Regeneration Program, which is led personally by Your Excellency, Mr. President, and also the Deputy President, by spearheading the Nairobi Rivers Commission. Second, we are committed to institutionalizing adaptation and resilience for the most vulnerable urban poor through our programmatic work and also our programmatic approach. Through the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, UNCDF, 2022 to 2026 for Kenya, BCRUP became one of the joint programs for the Kenyan country office and the 4 other agencies. At the second session of the UN Habitat Assembly, Member States adopted a historic resolution on adequate housing for all, renewing their call to prioritize adequate housing and view housing as a human right for the first time since 1948, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. Last but not least, the partnership and network around BCRUP to support mobilizing, finance, and bring the needs of the most vulnerable urban poor to the center stage of the global climate discourse. I'm happy to announce that UN Habitat will support the COP28 presidency in hosting the second iteration of the ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change at COP28 in Dubai. And this ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change will be the curtain raiser of the thematic day on the multi-level action, urbanizations, built environment, and transport at COP28. We definitely will bring the most vulnerable in our cities to the UNFCCC and COPs and the implementation of the Paris Agreement to the cities. We already launched the strategy. I think now is the time for us to work together. We were involved in the formulating of the strategy, and now to dissect the strategy and form a local action and come and also fundraise to together to implement the program that is stated in the strategic plan. It is time to join forces to scale up our efforts and build resilience for the most vulnerable urban poor. You can count on me. You can count on UN Habitat. Thank you. Asante sana.
Another round of applause for our ED. Thank you so much, ED. We now move quickly to the segment on partnerships. And our first partnership is with the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa. We are so glad to have you as our partner on this journey. About 2 months ago, we entered into an MOU where now BCRAP has been made a regional issue. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite Jean-Pierre Elong Bassi, my good friend, to come and make his remarks. Karibu. Welcome.
Good morning. It's always very difficult to speak after the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. Ruto, is so eloquent, so engaged, that I'm being shy to address you at this moment. Honorable Cabinet Secretaries and Ministers here present, county governors, mayors, and leaders of local governments, development partners, civil society, informal settlement organization. I'm addressing you on behalf of the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, the umbrella organization of this fraternity, and the mouthpiece of almost 16,000 local government on the continent, representing 350 million people. So I'm a heavy weight in front of you. But let's start by recognizing that this Africa Climate Summit has been a landmark event, very well organized, and we are happy as the local government fraternity of the place and role that our local government community has gained in this summit. I hope that is one for all, that we will be local government part and parcel of any climate conversation. And I'm glad that, let's say, the poor part of our cities have been honored by the President of the Republic himself. And I hope that everybody knows that President Ruto is also the chair of the Committee of Head of State of the African Union on Climate Change. So this recognition of slum dwellers, informal settlement people by President Ruto means two things. First of all, I know that most of you know the background of this man. He is coming from informal settlement. And he has a promise, while I follow some of the event going on in Kenya, he made the promise that his leadership will bring about change in the living condition of the poor neighborhoods. And him championing BCRAP means that he's keeping his word. And let us put our hand together to help realizing this promise. This my first comment. The second comment I have is that all this is stemming from a long journey that Kenya have been championing with Brazil. President Ruto said at the UN Habitat Assembly that he was joking. He wishes that COP28 will be the last COP. Why did he say so? Because he think we make statement, we take engagement, and we don't implement much. BCROP is about implementation. And when my sister Maimuna says everybody should join hands to help implement BCROP, we are totally dedicated to that. And UCLG Africa, because is the reality of people living on the ground, has been chosen by the African Ministerial Conference on Environment to be the host of the African Adaptation Initiative. The same way we offer to be the host of BCROP, because BCROP is the materialization of going from decision at the top level to implementation at the ground level. And we are county governments, local governments. We are the ground level where development is verified or doesn't exist. So our organization is totally committed to supporting this BCROP. And we make a promise here that since our regional office for East Africa is being established here in Nairobi, we will want that this regional office run with this BCROP so that the people out there in Matare Valley and the other counties that the president said will feel that beyond conferences, something is happening that will change their life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now we move to matters financing. We all know that to change the course of the urban poor, we need money. And to come and give us a bit of a perspective of where this money is going to come from, allow me to invite Eduardo Freitas, who is the Regional Manager, Africa Desk Division of Country Programming Green Climate Fund. Karibu. Let's give him a round of applause, please. He comes.
Thank you, CS. First, let me start by thanking the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing, and Urban Development, and PS for the invitation for the GCF to join this distinguished event. To Excellencies, colleagues, partners, distinguished guests, thank you for allowing me to speak a few minutes. I feel like the second shy person to be on the stage today. Mr. Embassy, you are eloquent as well. ED, very eloquent. And of course, His Excellency has been the first one to start putting me in a bit of a shy position, thinking I'll be on the stage right after this. So thank you very much. First of all, let me start by saying that we have been working with the UCLG. Since recently, we've approved a proposal that they requested to strengthen the climate capacities of local governments so that they can take their leadership role in planning investments for the GCF and expediting investments that the GCF can bring to the ground. This is a preparatory support work. We cannot stop there. We are working with UCLG already, thinking about BCROP, but the work has as end goal to bring investments to projects and programs. Today, what I wanted to do, I'll be looking at a bit of my script here, but is to make sure I don't forget any point about what the GCF has been looking at when it comes to urban resilience, because I want to stress the alignment between the GCF's discussions and DCREP's objectives and outcomes. A vast majority of cities in developing countries today still struggle to have regular and uninterrupted access to development and climate finance, to prioritize green and resilient development and projects, and most of all, to understand how to optimally sequence and target interventions towards achieving the most ambitious and resilient climate impact for the urban poor, for their communities, and for societies at large. There is a huge gap between what is needed and what we're able to finance today. And more focus is needed on adaptation. We understand and we want to bring more focus on adaptation, particularly in LDCs and in SIDS. Partners with the GCF have assessed recently that there are areas where mature technologies exist and have the potential to bring and deliver high impact, cost-effective climate benefits at scale with local benefits as well. These areas include decarbonization of urban energy systems, scaling up distributed renewable energy, for instance, energy efficiency and building stock with retrofits, with construction of new green buildings and districts utilizing ecosystem-based adaptation, compact and resilience urban development with integrated planning and investments to avoid or reduce the need of transportation demand, to integrate ecosystem-based approach into urban planning, and circular urban economy, shifting away from the current take, make, waste urban economies of today. These are just a few of these paradigm-shifting pathways that we want to invest in. But barriers to achieving these objectives exist. These include or range from lack of enabling policy frameworks, integrated policy and planning and systems, and institutional and technical capacities, lack of structures for upfront funding to cover project preparation costs, limited support to fostering new business, technologies, financing structures, the increased perceived risk-reward profile by project developers and financiers due to the large upfront investments and longer payback periods of low emission and climate resilient investments, lack of access to long-term finance at affordable rates and appropriate repayment schedules, supply of private institutional and commercial finance, knowledge and performance data associated with low emission, climate resilient urban infrastructure, limiting potential for replication and scale. The GCF wants to help remove many of these barriers. Some of the work, as I was saying, we have started with readiness investments with UCLG. We have partnerships with the UN Habitat. We're happy to discuss today with Commonwealth how we can partner as a global network to remove these barriers on the institutional, the planning, on the technical institutional capacities, on the modeling side, on capacity to develop pipelines of investments, but first and foremost, capacity to develop, sequence, prioritize investments that the GCF can make so that we can bring money to the ground and to projects. We're committed to doing that. UCOG is one example. Through readiness, we are also launching this month a methodology that we believe will help project developers, communities, partners to expedite the presentation of a concept note for the GCF. There are steps we believe that can be streamlined and expedited, so we were happy to launch that here at this event as well. And we are committed to moving forward. Together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freitas. And to bring to an end this session on partnerships, allow me to invite Dr. Ruth Katumuri. She's the Senior Director, Economic, Youth and Sustainable Development, Commonwealth Secretariat. Karibu. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everybody, and karibu, asante sana. This is my third visit to Kenya, and every time I come here, in about a year and a half, I see how much Kenya is shining each time brighter. What I would like to talk to save time is just a few things. One is the mantra my current mantra is the future is urban. By 2025, the number of people living in urban areas will exceed people living in urban areas. The majority of cities are being built in emerging economies and developing countries. But how do we ensure resilient, inclusive, smart, and sustainable cities? This is the stock take, SDG stock take. 2023 is the stock take year for SDGs. If we have to achieve our SDGs, it can only be done by enhancing implementation of sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development in Africa. Underline, in Africa. Unless we do Africa, we cannot achieve our goals. So let me talk about a few partners. We've been working with B Group and UCLGA for the last 6 months, and we are making good progress already. I just want to highlight a few aspects of the Commonwealth which are relevant in this context. Firstly, the Commonwealth Universal Vulnerability Index, which has informed the forthcoming UN Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, very clearly shows that financing should be dependent on vulnerabilities of countries. The criteria have to change from outdated criteria of GDP per capita principles to say that it has to be based on vulnerabilities of countries to enable them to build resilience. So that's an initiative through which we have also launched a Commonwealth call for a new financial architecture, which feeds into that, working with all the other international institutions, the World Bank and IMF as well. Then I want to talk about our public, the climate work. We have two initiatives called the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which works with member countries, including in Africa. We have 21 countries from Africa who are members of the Commonwealth. We work closely by embedding our advisors in the country to give capacity building and technical assistance to enable them access global climate funds. That includes partnership with the GCF. And to date, we have been able to achieve about $310 million worth of funding for our countries directly. The other thing we launched at CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting last year, is the Living Lands Charter. Now, there again, there are lots of opportunities to work with Africa in terms of ensuring resilience for our countries. Then in the context of sustainable urbanization, this was a mandate that was launched at CHOGM 2022. And this is part of what we are trying to work to build that partnership, to work with our partners in a way, how do we achieve these goals together? And I also want to mention one other program that the Commonwealth does, which is a public debt management system. We're talking about financing. So if we focus on a few aspects of financing, debt used to be hidden under the table before. Nobody talked about the word debt because it wasn't fashionable to talk about debt. But today, we see that countries who are affected by climate change disasters, their debt levels are going up because they have to borrow money to increase to be able to recover, and that puts a huge debt burden on them. So how do we bring all these things together? So it has to be a range of financing instruments and mechanisms. So let me give a few examples of some of our other work. For Kenya in particular, we are also looking at not just Kenya, but generally we are also looking at national own source financing mechanisms. And that there are a few examples. The case of Kenya very strongly shows the diaspora investment would be a very good source of development financing that diaspora are interested to invest into Africa. The same way, even debt by doing fintech. Kenya is another leader in fintech. All these mechanisms, there can be processes for enabling own source revenue for Kenya, and the Meridian system also to monitor and manage this debt. So these are some of the instruments in tangible ways, but then these things we cannot do. Commonwealth can't come and do these things by itself in Kenya, but working together with the group and other partners, we are making good progress already. You can see this is an example of that. And we have to complement and supplement and work together to implement our common goals. There will be challenges, And what are those challenges which we need to overcome? We have to develop criteria and mechanisms to be enabling, efficient, and achievable. And so we look forward to working with other new partners who are here today, as well as we see that the president, by personally getting involved in this work and launching this initiative, gives it commitment and further impetus. Now, there are two things that the president, he gives sound bites. Somebody I was talking to earlier today said, oh, then he should be a rapper. Because
Well, what you're just watching, it is at the Comesa grounds at the Kenyatta International Airport, not the Kenyatta International Airport, but the Kenyatta International Convention Center, which is the KICC. Mentioned that the JKI today will be a beehive of activities of the dignitaries. We expect them to leave, given that today it is the last day of the African Climate Summit. We do anticipate the Nairobi Declaration to be launched by none other than the president, who is also the chair of the Climate Change Summit of the African continent, in around 2 p.m. or so. We also do know that the president will have a closed door meeting right now, which is having at the KICC amphitheater with the various heads of state, over 20 of them who came into the country to witness this historical moment. Now, to recap a little bit of what the president has just launched there, it was about the building climate resilience urban poor. He clearly stated that 1,400, there are 1,400 informal settlements in the country, and they lack superior amenities as they are entitled to, given that the Constitution clearly stipulates that. The climate action clearly states that it needs to relook at the model of the urban poor institution as well. Now, this is what the president has been